Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Another art doll video today. So this one is about Madam Tippy Toes. So nice long legs. Yeah, she's the third medieval cat art doll. She's currently available in my shop, creaturesandart.com. Payment plans are also welcome, so just shoot me a message and I can tell you how they work. So this one was the, I guess, semi-viral one that when I sculpted the head. And a little close look at the head, if we can get it to focus. So she's got a pretty cool side eye. I'll post some pictures of the side eye. They're kind of follow me eyes, so they work really well. So yeah, polymer clay head and feet, ball and socket armor chain sides, so she is posable, of course. Can't forget the old little butthole that I had to put in this one. So she's got quite a little sweet face. This little crown, I put like a little piece of elastic on there so it doesn't come off, but it is removable if you don't want it on there. But it's just a nice little prop, perfect size for this little one. So if you want to know how I made her, then just keep watching. Alright, so I'm starting off with an aluminium foil core, and that basically acts as a skull, and I'm also using polymer clay, which I am using Sculpey Original for this one. It's a bit of a softer clay, but I particularly like working with softer clays rather than harder ones, but it's all up to the individual artist. So I'm going to cover the ball with a layer of the polymer clay, and then I can start building up, sort of constructing a really rough outline or structure of the head. And because this is Medieval Cat, I'm sort of just doing it on a whim here. I had a kind of an idea of what I wanted to do, but I didn't have any reference images that I was working with really. So I just sort of went with the flow for this one. So I'm doing a little pink nose for this one. I'm using Super Sculpey for this. It's a beige coloured polymer clay. It's a little bit harder than Sculpey Original, and it's a little bit translucent as well. So it has that nice translucent sort of look when kind of the same as real cat noses. So I use it quite often for things like gums, tongues, sort of things that are a little bit translucent and a beigey colour. Moving on to the eyes, I am using some flat pack cabochons that are pre-made eyes for this particular doll. Sometimes I paint them, sometimes I make them myself. But as they're a flat back eye, it needs to have a little bit of a lift when putting it on because it's flat. So I put a couple of balls of clay where the eyes are going to go just to lift those eyes up into the right place, and then sort of position them symmetrically and sitting correctly. So I look at it from all different angles to make sure that they're all sitting nice and symmetrical. So this little kitty, I did a quick little short on here just of the sculpting process for this, and it went quite semi-viral. And I think it was because the eyes started out like this, really wide-eyed, and then what I actually did was pretty much cover the entire eye into like a little slit. So yeah, I think people found that kind of funny. Alright, so I carved out a little bit of an eye well where the tear duct sort of is with my loop tool, and then I'm going to go ahead and create the eyelids out of a snake. So I've rolled out a little piece of clay into a worm, which I usually do this process for all of my eyelids. It works really well, and then sort of add a little bit of detail once I've positioned them into a spot that I like. So as this kitty I had in my head, I wanted really closed eyes, kind of like little slits. So this is a really harsh sort of a harsh eyelid, I should say, but then I ended up covering the rest of it with just some thicker clay to build up on those brow lines. But again, I'm just going with the flow here. There's no structure that I am following. Alright, so I'm just going to start building on those brow lines a little bit. This head I'm trying to keep really small. All three of these medieval cats are quite small. And I'm just keep building up that forehead little area before I start adding the ears. So I can start adding a little bit more detailing work now that I've pretty much done the structure of the doll. So it's all that little fine little detailing work that I'm going to do. I'm not going to go too overboard because I'm going to cover it in faux fur anyway. So, you know, if I was doing a raw painted piece, I obviously have to spend more time doing detailing work and cleaning it up a little bit, but because it's going to be covered in faux fur, you don't need to waste time doing that. So I just played around with the eye area a little bit. I wanted to have a more elongated look, so I used my little needle tool and pulled out the corners of those eyes a little bit just to make them a little bit more elongated. Okay, so for the ears, I've rolled out 2 bits of equal parts of clay, and then I've kind of fashioned them into a point of the ears. These aren't going to be really huge ears like Duke of Whiskers. Those ears are really long, but these ones are just going to be like kind of small little ears. So just roughly shaping them and creating that little inner well using my silicone tool, and then I can add them to the head. Okay, once I've popped them onto the head, I can start blending them into the rest of the clay using my silicone tool. Sometimes I add a little bit more clay if I see an area that's kind of lacking in it and needs a bit more support. I'll just pop on a little bit more clay and blend it in with my silicone tool. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of fur detailing just around the muzzle area and a little bit on the eyes, not too much. It just helps me blend in the fur when I'm using that, and kind of gives a little direction of which way to put the fur as well. Now for the paws, I'm doing pretty much 4 of the same kind of paws. So I've rolled out equal parts of clay, 1 for the main part of the paw and 4 bits for the little toes. So it makes it easier to sculpt paws that are all the same size. So it also cuts down a lot of time just taking bits of clay and trying to make them equal. So if you roll out little bits of clay, equal parts, it saves a lot of time. So I basically just add, after I've shaped the main part of the paw, I just add the toes on with those 4 bits of clay that we rolled out, and just sort of blending it in and making sure that they're sitting in the right position. I always have reference images up if I'm using, if I'm sculpting things like this that need to be a little bit realistic. So all different angles. So I've sculpted a lot of paws in my time, so I can sort of do it like the back of my hand now, but it's always good to have reference images up. And moving on to the armature, so I'm using a 1/8 scale armature, which is my smallest piece. I've already attached the clay pieces to the armature itself using some epoxy sculpt, and then I can start popping on all of the pieces. So this body was the main feature of this medieval cat. It has really, really long legs, hence the title Madam Tippy Toes. So the legs were quite long. I haven't done legs this long before, especially in a medieval cat. So I've just basically I didn't have a plan for this particular armature. I just went with the flow, and kept the body pretty petite as well. Now I get asked all the time about these armatures I have stock in my shop. I primarily have it in coils and also the attachments, but I'm kind of plumb out on the pliers that needed to pop them together, apart from the largest size. I will get some more in stock though, but it's just going to take some time. Okay, and once I am happy with the way the armatures come together, I'm going to start applying the polyfill. So what I do to begin with is wrap some pipe cleaners around the armature, and that's basically to help catch the fibers. Otherwise it's really, really slippery. So I find just wrapping it in pipe cleaner, those little hair bits catch the polyfill, and so it's a lot easier to felt the body. And once it's done, I can start felting the body. So what I do is get a nice wad of polyfill and start wrapping it around the body to begin with. So I do an initial layer of the polyfill, and then I can go around and start building up all the areas that need to be built up. But as this is a pretty petite little cat, I don't have to build up the muscle tone too much. It's mainly just around the body that needs to be built up like a tiny bit. The legs are going to remain relatively thin because Madam Tippy Toes. So I really only have to do like one sort of layer of the polyfill around the legs, and then just slightly build up the body area. Alright, once we're happy with the way the body looks, I can start applying the faux fur. So I'm just finishing off a couple of little final touches. I don't normally needle felt the tail. If I need to add faux fur, I'll just add it in sort of manually. Otherwise it ends up kind of a bit too thick. Alright, so I'm going to be working with some white faux fur for this one, which I'm going to trim pretty extensively, and then add a little bit of airbrushing to add a tiny bit of ginger colouring. So I'm just removing one of the ends here, because sometimes you get ends that are sort of glued together, so you need to remove that, otherwise it turns out a bit yucky. So I'm just removing it with my scissors, and then I can start pinning the torso piece together. So I normally start off pinning the torso piece, sewing that up first, and then I'll move on to the extremities like the legs, the neck and the tail. For this one I didn't add a neck because it basically has no neck, this particular doll. So as I go through, I kind of clean up anything that I cut, because you end up losing a lot of the pile when you cut the backing. So we want to keep that nice and clean before we start moving on to sewing it all up. So I cut some little slits where the legs are going to go, and then sort of wrap it around and pin it together, and I'll end up sewing that with a ladder stitch, just so it sort of conforms around to the legs, and then I have space to sew on those leg pieces. Alright, so once those little torso piece has been sewn up, I can start moving on to those leg areas. Normally I pin them all at the same time and then do like a mass sewing so I can get it sort of out of the way. And you want to get yourself a good quality thread to do this ladder stitch, especially when you're using faux fur. You need something that's a bit stronger because you need a bit of tension to pull on that thread and keep the seams closed. So I use a Gutermann thread, sometimes an upholstery thread, which is really, really thick, just depending on what I'm sewing. So yeah, definitely get yourself a good quality thread. And I won't go into too much sewing because it's super boring. It's my least favorite part of the whole doll making process. So obviously it's a necessary part, but yeah, it's just literally, I have a video talking about how I do ladder stitches, especially with faux fur, and what to look out for. So I never remember to link things, but it's in Materials 101 section, I think. So check that out. Alright, so once that's sewn up, I can start gluing everything together. So I'm using a tacky fabric glue here. I just get it from my local store, Spotlight. If you're in Australia, I'm not too sure. You might probably be able to get something from Michael's, and I think Joann's in the States, something similar. But it's just a really tacky fabric glue that bonds polymer clays and plastics really well to fabrics. I usually leave it overnight to dry, sometimes 24 hours, but it usually tacks off within a couple of hours. But I just leave it to dry and adhere really tight before I start moving on to the next step. So I glue the neck and the leg areas and then leave that. Then I move on to applying some of the faux fur to those polymer clay bits. So this one is relatively small, so it's a really quick job. So I've applied the faux fur, and then I'm just going to be adding some more little details. Normally I do this painting process before I add the faux fur, but I wasn't sure which colours I wanted to go with, so I did it. I do it in two parts anyway, even if I do paint beforehand, I do end up painting again just to enhance those details. So I'm just using some acrylic paint just to paint the nose area, the mouth area in like a little pink color. Around the eyes, I went with a little bit of brown. It kind of looks like eyeliner, just to enhance those lines a bit more. And I'm going to be using my airbrush, like I said before, to add just a small bit of ginger colouring with some striping. So I start off with my lightest colour first, which is kind of like, the paint's called skin tone base, but it's a bit weird because it's like a peach colour. So I wouldn't exactly call it a skin tone base, but I started off with that one. It makes a really nice ginger colour. I've used it on multiple dolls, so I've watered down a little bit in my mixing cup and started airbrushing some small little sections, including the tail. And then I go in with a bit of a darker orange colour just to create those striping effects. Now Madam Tippy Toes has a little surprise at the end for you, so just stay tuned for that. And there you go, there it is. Had to be added. I think it just adds that extra little bit of detail and attitude, so definitely more to come on more cat dolls, so keep your eye out for that. Yeah, let me know how you like the video, leave a little comment, and don't forget to like and share and all that stuff. It helps my channel grow, my videos get pushed out, so it'd be really nice to be able to get some recognition for my videos, my work. But thank you so much for joining me. If you want a little bit more, I do have a Patreon. I'm trying to be a bit more active on it and post a bit more things, so apologies if I'm not so active on it. But there is a whole heap of tutorials on there as well already up, and printables and all sorts of things like that. But anyway, you can check me out on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Like I said, Madam Tippy Toes is available, and payment plans are also available as well. So just shoot me a message. I'm really flexible with them. So I try and make it accessible for everybody. But anyway, thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!